Hi everyone, this is our channel, Meet the Real Story. Please like, share and subscribe.
One of the best feelings in the world for any woman is being a mother. To have someone love you for who you are, for just being you, and expect nothing in return. You're the heroine of their story. You become everything they ever dreamed, and you'd give anything to see a smile on their face. I'm proud to say that I'm a mother to 50 kids. I know, that's a lot, but let me tell you the story. I'm Susan, 20 years old. I come from a very rich family. My dad's Stefan Heiss, a very famous businessman. Yes, the owner of Heiss Cars Industry. My mom's Elena. She comes from a very rich family in Sweden. She married my dad and they built their life from scratch. I loved kids, ever since I was a kid. Sometimes I feel like they're walking cotton candy. Their laughs, their mischief. All the kids in our family loved me, and I loved them. Even my aunt said that I'd make a great mother someday. So did Henry. Henry was my childhood friend. We grew up together. We had the same interests, same hobbies. We even thought alike. We got married and started our life together. We were young, but our dreams were big. I was thrilled when I found out that I was pregnant, and Henry was so happy he couldn't believe it. He did everything he could to help me relax. He couldn't wait to be a father. But destiny had something else in store for us. We had just arrived from Sweden. Henry had a problem at work. He was talking on the phone while driving at high speed on a dangerous road. I tried to tell him to watch the road, but it was too late. A truck came out of nowhere and pushed our car off the side. We fell into the lake, and we were unconscious. When I woke up, I found my mother and Henry's mother both looking at me, trying their best not to cry, and I soon found out why. In order to save my life, they put me through an operation. Not only have I lost my child, but I won't be able to have one ever again. Henry was also bruised, but my wounds ran way deeper. That was it, and I could never forgive him. If it weren't for him, none of this would have happened, I thought. None of it. I got a divorce later, after Henry tried over and over and over to fix the situation, to apologize, to ask for a second chance, but all I saw were empty words. There was no second chance. I tried to keep myself busy, find a way to invest my money and time, trying to get my mind off the accident. I decided to open up a toy store. I wanted to bring joy to all the children. One day, as I was standing in my store, I glimpsed a small boy standing out front, looking at a toy. The boy was alone, about 8 years old, but that wasn't all. His clothes were patched up and looked more like rags. His face and hands were dirty, and he just stood there, looking at the doll, daydreaming. I found myself walking out to him, but when he saw me coming, he ran away. A few days passed, and that boy's gaze was all I thought of. Then, one day, I found him outside the store again, looking at a different toy. I moved towards him slowly this time, till I was right beside him. Then I said, "Do you like it?" The boy freaked out and tried to run again, but I caught his arm this time and said, "Don't be afraid. I'm Susan." The boy looked at me, terrified, and I smiled. He started to relax. He told me his name was Billy, and that he was 7, and that he lives nearby. When I asked him about his parents, he said he never knew them, that he lived with Uncle Max. I asked him who Uncle Max was, but he cast his eyes down and was nervous all of a sudden. He looked a bit scared. I got curious, so I took him home with me, let him shower, and prepared a hot meal. I told him that I'd take him home after he'd eaten. I asked him about where he lived. He was quiet for a second. Then he said he had to go, that his brothers and sisters were waiting for him. I asked him how many he had. "Around 50, he said. I was shocked. He told me that they all lived in a big room with Uncle Max. But how is this Uncle Max able to look after you all? I asked curiously. But he got nervous again, and he insisted that he must leave, so I decided to take him there. Maybe it'll help clear some of the mystery, I thought. I drove, and Billy was guiding the way, until we got there. The place was a bit far from all the other houses. It looked more like a dump, with some sort of shack built on it. A man was standing in front of the door, holding a kid by the arm and beating him senseless. The boy was younger than Billy, and Billy was shaking next to me, mumbling to himself. He's gonna hit me too. I'm so late. Then he turned to me and said, Bye, Susan. You have to leave now, quickly. And then he ran towards the shack. I backed up the car and stood nearby to see what happens. The man hit him hard across the face, and I heard him say, Where's the money you stole today, boy? Billy turned out his empty pockets, and the man dragged him inside by the collar. I wanted to help, so I decided to call Henry, who was more than happy to answer my call. I told him what had happened, and he came to me. We approached the shack together slowly and looked through the window. A lot of children, ages from 3 to 7. The place was a real dump. The man was sitting at a table. It had food and drink. Billy was dragging a heavy sack on the floor, and another kid was carrying a cup to bring to the man, who snatched it out of the boy's hand. Then he got up and started waking the rest of the kids, telling them to get out there and bring him money, that they would face a real nightmare if they didn't. I wanted to barge in, but Henry stopped me. He called the police instead. The police came quickly, and they caught the man. Apparently, he kidnapped these children from parks and surrounding areas, so they could steal for him, and he would starve them and beat them. The police didn't know what to do with all the children, and I felt like this was my second chance. I told the police that I would build a home big enough, and I would take them all in, to give them the care and love that they deserve. And that is how I became a mother to 50 kids.
7 years old can be a very critical age in a human's life. It's the year we graduate from first grade to second grade. It also may be the year when you first participate in a sport that will shape your future. But for me, it was the age when my parents decided they wanted to lead separate lives. I grew up like any average girl, attended a good preschool, participated in sports, and had good friends. My parents, as I recall, were always in a good mood with each other and shared the joy of raising their daughter together. I have few memories of the bad times my parents had argued. The worst memory I recall is lying in my bed one night when I was 7 years old and having my parents come into my room and my father saying, Tanya, your mother and I are getting a divorce. My immediate reaction was a natural instinct for a young child, which was to blame myself. I often had more than one birthday party as a kid. This sounds cool, but it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. I'm a child of divorce. My childhood wasn't mine. It belonged to my parents. I lost myself in every effort to appease each side of my family. Shuffling alone between two separate lives meant that I was on the fringe of each family, never an insider. The people I loved most were never in the same room together, and many of them barely even knew each other existed. I missed out on events and celebrations because I would have to spend time with my other family. Children of divorce learn to cope with these struggles and instability by the age of 10. I no longer wanted to deal with it. I didn't want to live in two different homes with two different bedrooms, different clothes, different toys, different friends, and even different rules. I was a 10-year-old caught between a rock and a hard place. So one day I told my dad that I didn't want to visit anymore. It was a courageous and ignorant act, to be honest. We will never know if it was the right decision or not. But at the time, neither one of my parents possessed the emotional stability it would have taken to unearth a more positive solution. And so that was the way things went. The power struggle that had lain dormant between my parents erupted again, and this time it was directed at me. This time I was responsible for the discord. In one house, I was blamed. In the other, I was a victim. There were no more multiple birthday parties. Instead, there was stability and consistency in one house, anger and avoidance in the other. Choice is met with consequences, and as time went on, I fell out of touch with my dad's family. It's hard to stay in touch with people connected to someone we have pushed away. Cousins I used to play with were erased from my life. We never visited again. Was that because it's best to keep served ties cut? Or was it my punishment for being a horrible child? All I knew was silence and loss. When I was in my early teens, my mom remarried and I met new cousins. I learned new Christmas traditions and sat with new kids at the dinner table. Instead of being ushered from one family to the other, life settled down. Even though I heard from my dad only once or twice a year, life was fairly stable. But that changed again when my mom and stepdad split up during my first year of university. I tried to keep in touch with my family members every time I went home for the holidays. Again, I tried to please everyone while anxiety flooded my thoughts. Whom should I spend Christmas Eve with? Should I visit with this family or that one? Will they be offended if I don't make time to see them? Will they be offended if I don't bring presents? I would have loved to have everyone drop by and visit me, but that would not have gone very well at my mom's house. Instead, I diligently visited everybody on my own, carrying thoughtful little presents I bought on my student budget. I would make small talk and feel like an outsider. I was always the awkward guest, never the welcoming host. For 10 years after I graduated from university, I lived away from home. Not a single family member from any one of my four families, save for my mom, came to visit, called, or even let me know when they flew through town. Yet, every time I went home for Christmas, I scheduled visits, bought presents, and made time to see as many people as I could. I did this to make them feel good, not me. 2 years ago, I moved back home, and now I live less than a day's drive away from all four of my families, their new spouses, and young kids. We're all connected on Facebook, but my mom is still the only person who ever calls or visits. When I hear that a family member passed through town but didn't call, it saddens me. But I realized that they don't call because they don't really know me. To them, I was never a fixture. I was only ever around a few Christmases here and there, and although they were my family, I was never theirs. They don't know that they are just one of several people spread across four different families that I wasn't able to keep in touch with. Sometimes divorce spreads us too thin to make anything real, lasting family connections. This summer, I am getting married and starting my family. I'm trying not to have too many expectations. I know no family is perfect, but my soon to be husband is the king at keeping in touch with people. He's persistent, charismatic, forgiving, and loyal. He's teaching me what family means. Together, we will teach our kids to reach out to one another with compassion and to stick by each other through times of darkness. I'm looking forward to joy and friendship with my new family, and I plan to do everything I can to stay married.
I don't know where to begin. I don't want to live alone. I'm fed up. I need someone to talk to laugh with, to play with. I've been lonely since birth. My name is Bella, and I'm 10 years old. And this is my story. I lived with my parents in a nice, quiet neighborhood. My father was an engineer, and my mother was a housewife. Father used to travel a lot, but my mom always stayed home with me. Father was always busy. Whenever I asked him to play with me, he'd play with me for a while. Then he'd get a phone call and leave me by myself. Mother was always worried about me. She feared everything on the street, from friends to neighbors. My neighborhood didn't have any kids for me to play with. My parents used to fight a lot. I often saw Mother with her face colored blackish blue. Whenever I would ask her about it, she wouldn't reply. I didn't have any friends because Mother didn't want me to have any. I guess she was afraid they would hurt me. I don't know. One time, my parents were sitting together, and I asked Father why I didn't have any brothers or sisters. He told me to ask Mother, but Mother would just sit there silently, without answering. Later, there came a time when Father grabbed Mother and began beating her. I tried to pull him away from her, screaming, "Leave her alone! Let her go!" He slapped me hard, and I fell down. The last thing I heard before I lost consciousness was my mom screaming. I woke up later in the hospital to see my mom crying. She asked me if I was okay, and I nodded. When we returned home, my father wasn't there. I asked Mom where he was, but she simply said that he left on a very long business trip. I was feeling a little sad, but Mom surprised me with a doll. This was the first time that Mom had ever given me a doll. She said that doll would be like my little sister. I hugged it tightly and said to it, "Nancy, you and I are going to be the best sisters ever." Mom often left me with Nancy when she had to go out to do business. It was okay though. I felt that Nancy could understand me whenever I spoke to her. Time passed quickly. One day, Mom came home tired and went to sleep on the couch. I made a tent in my room where I collected all of my toys and played with Nancy. I was speaking to Nancy and telling her how beautiful she was and how I felt lucky to have her as a sister. Then I asked her, "Nancy, do you know why Father left us?" Miraculously, Nancy answered me, saying, "Father left you because he never really loved you to begin with." I was shocked and took 2 steps back. Then I said with a trembling voice, "Nancy, you you can speak?" Nancy answered and said, "Of course. Can't all dolls?" From that moment on, Nancy and I lived in our own private little world. We didn't let anyone know about this. It was our secret. Once, when we were sitting alone, Nancy said to me, "Bella, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" I asked. Then she said the strangest thing. "You have to leave this world because you deserve a better one." That didn't make sense. Actually, it felt more like a threat. It frightened me, and I called for Mom. When she came in, I told her what Nancy had just said to me. She replied saying, "Nonsense, Bella. Nancy is just a doll. She can't talk. Maybe you're just tired. Get some sleep." So I tried to sleep, but Nancy wouldn't let me sleep. She left me alone until midnight, then she woke me up. She put her hand over my mouth and whispered, "Please listen to me. Don't scream, okay?" she said. "I know all your fears, your father's cruelty, your loneliness, your love for me, how your love and belief in me transformed me from a toy to a sentient doll. I really love you, Bella, and I want you to be happy." Her words calmed me down, and I said, "You're right, Nancy. So what do we do then?" She explained her plan to me. "In 2 days' time, we'll run away from home to a place called Toyland, where we'll meet some great friends." Whenever Mom was busy with work, I would speak and laugh with Nancy, and whenever Mom would enter the room and ask me who I was speaking to, I would laugh and point at Nancy. I could see in Mom's eyes that she was beginning to worry about me. One day, as Nancy and I were preparing our stuff to escape, we were looking at a map we had prepared. Then, unexpectedly, Mom came into the room. She saw the map and asked me about it. I looked at Nancy, and she gestured with her eyes that I shouldn't say anything. Seeing this, Mom took Nancy and threw her into the trash can. I screamed and pleaded. That was all I remember.